What if I told you your child's bedtime doesn't start at 8 p.m., but at breakfast? In today's episode, we're flipping the script on what bedtime means by exploring your child's entire day, because how they eat, move, learn, and decompress throughout the day directly shapes how they sleep at night. If bedtime feels like a battle, or if your child just can't seem to settle down, this episode is your reset button. Hello, I'm Soda Kuchkowski, sleep health educator and certified sleep coach, and for over 2 decades, I've been working to transform how we think about sleep. The Doze Podcast is where we do just that, breaking down cultural myths, offering real-life strategies, and making sleep a lifestyle, not just a nighttime routine. It's where we explore the deeper reasons behind your sleep challenges and empower you to create lasting change, one episode at a time. Now, last week, we explored the family sleep dynamic, how kids are often misunderstood at bedtime and why melatonin might not be the solution parents are hoping for. Today, we're building on that with a foundational truth I've seen change everything for families. Bedtime begins at breakfast. This episode isn't just about sleep tips. It's about a new way to structure your day, communicate as a family, and help your child develop the self-awareness and routines they need to thrive. Let's start with something simple, but a powerful foundational step for good sleep. And that's wake time consistency. You know, it's one of the underrated tools in family sleep health. Even if your bedtime varies slightly, having a consistent wake time sets your child's circadian rhythm, reinforces their internal clock, and makes falling asleep at night that much easier. Pair that with natural morning light, a protein-rich breakfast, and hydration, and you've just given their brain and body the cue it's time to function, focus, and feel good. And hydration is something I want to emphasize, especially if your child sleeps hot, wakes up groggy, or struggles with focus. Start the day with a full glass of water and consider adding a pinch of pink salt or an electrolyte powder if they're active or not great with their water consumption. You know, I've recently added them to my daughter's water as she's super active and can sometimes forget to grab water in between her activities. But hydration is just one piece of a much bigger picture. You know, from the moment your child wakes up, their entire biological clock, their circadian rhythm, is already being shaped by what they see, eat, do, and experience. You know, if mornings are chaotic, screens before breakfast, skipping meals, or a rush commute, they're already starting the day off rhythm. So there are a few steps that I want you to aim for. First, within 30 minutes of waking, expose them to natural sunlight. I want you to open up the blinds, maybe step outside, or even eat breakfast by a window. This helps suppress melatonin and reinforce a healthy sleep-wake cycle. Second, serve a protein-rich breakfast. You know, you want to avoid those high-sugar cereals or quick carbs that spike and crash energy. Instead, I want you to think about things like eggs, yogurt, which can be fairly quick, oatmeal, or nut butter toast. This stabilizes energy and mood, which sets up a calmer, more balanced day. You know, fueling their bodies properly is a powerful first step, but just as important is how we move through the morning itself, because what we eat is only part of that equation. The energy, pace, and emotions we set early in the day create a ripple effect that impacts everything, including how easily our kids can settle down at night. You know, the way your family starts the day sets the emotional tone for everything that follows. And yes, stressful mornings show up at bedtime. Now, there are a few ways to decrease the morning chaos and get everyone out the door without that cortisol spike. Some easy things you can do: prep the night before, you know, laying out clothes, packing lunches, and going over tomorrow's schedule during the dinner or before the wind down begins. Keep mornings screen free, you know, swap out TV for calming music or a light diffuser or even an audiobook. Create a family rhythm, not a strict routine. You know, visual checklists for younger kids and gentle transitions help reduce power struggles. I know we use them in our household for a lot of different things. And build in margin. Add an extra 10 minutes to everything in the morning and you'll be shocked how much more peace it brings. You know, these aren't just hacks, they're habits that give your child emotional capacity to move through their day with more ease. But of course, you might think, well, once my child's off to school, what happens next is often out of my control, but your influence still matters and it's still there. There are still ways to build structure around what you can support, and it starts with nutrition and movement. Midday blood sugar crashes, dehydration, or processed snacks lead to irritability, poor concentration, even hyperactivity in the evening. You want to send them with high-protein, whole food snacks like nuts, string cheese, yogurt, or hummus. And talk with your child about how different foods feel in their body. You're not just feeding them, you're helping them to become more body aware. And of course, movement is also key. Daily physical activity is a non-negotiable for mental health, emotional stability, and quality sleep. My daughter, for example, has a mix of structured activity and rest days built into her weekly schedule. There are intentional gaps before and after activities, and wind down time in the evenings, and most importantly, a reset check-in when things feel off. If she's got a big test, she knows she might need to skip an activity, but she also understands the value of movement, even if it's just a short walk. That awareness is key. She's learning how to listen to her body and self-regulate in a world that often encourages the opposite. And as a family, we keep the conversation open, and we ask questions like, how's your energy today? Or did anything feel like too much? Or what helped you feel calm or focused? These questions build emotional intelligence and reduce anxiety because your child feels seen, heard, and in control of their experience. The thing is, every hour of stimulation, stress, or lack of regulation during the day makes it harder for our kids to fall asleep at night. Think of it like a sleep bank. If you've been withdrawing all day without making deposits of calm or rest, their nervous system doesn't know how to slow down. So there are some key daytime routines to help regulate sleep. First is that physical activity early in the day. You want to let them burn energy in the morning or after school, not before bed. You want predictable transitions. Kids thrive on knowing what comes next. A visual schedule with images, right? Can reduce mental load and bedtime anxiety. As I mentioned, we use an erasable checklist in my house, so it also fosters independence and individual accountability. She knows what she has to do without me necessarily having to repeat myself, and she has a place to check in if she forgets something that she has to do. And last, quiet time after school. This is not screen time. This could be coloring, reading, or listening to music. This teaches our bodies how to downshift. The final few hours of the day are make or break for sleep. By late afternoon, your child's nervous system is either revving up or winding down, and you can help guide that trajectory with a few key moves. First is limiting sugary snacks or caffeine. That includes chocolate or sweetened drinks, after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Keep dinner consistent. A dinner that's too close to bedtime or too heavy can disrupt digestion and make it hard to fall asleep, so you want to aim for 2 to 3 hours before lights out. You want to create a predictable wind down window. Dim the lights, turn off tech, even implement a screen boundary. As blue light and rapid content from games or videos spike cortisol and delay melatonin. Try a tech curfew 1 hour before bed and transition with calm activities like audio stories, coloring, or drawing. I know personally for my daughter, when she's on devices, we have the parental controls. So, after she's used it, depending on the time of day, for a half hour or an hour, it'll actually shut down and she won't be able to use those applications. So again, that's that self-regulation. She knows that it's time to move on to that next activity. And then you want to check in emotionally. Many bedtime struggles are actually about connection. Use emotional offload time at dinner or before bed. A favorite in our house is the rose, thorn, bud. That's what went well, what was hard, and what you're looking forward to the next day, right? This emotional offload helps ease the mind before sleep. Remember, bedtime isn't the first step in a routine. It's the final cue that the brain and body are safe to rest. And don't forget yourself, rest as a family. Build in quiet moments where you just are. No screens, no to-do lists. It could be reading together, a cuddle pile on the couch, or taking a neighborhood walk after dinner. These rituals reinforce connection and calm, and they anchor a feeling of safety that makes it easier to release into sleep. When you shift your focus from just the 30 minutes before bed to the full 12 plus hours beforehand, bedtime becomes this natural landing point, not a war zone. And there's a simple framework that I share with families. And I'll drop it in the show notes below. And that's morning is bright light, balanced food and movement. Midday is focus, hydration, predictability. Afternoon is wind down, sensory play, and limiting sugar. And in the evening, it's about connection, turning technology off, and putting a routine in place. And lastly, at bedtime, we want low light, familiar steps. We want a predictable routine, no pressure. Remember, bedtime doesn't begin at 8 p.m. It begins with what you put on the plate at breakfast and the tone you set for the day. Now, we've walked through how the whole day shapes bedtime. And I thought it would be meaningful to hear directly from someone who's living it day to day, my daughter Ryan. If you tuned in last week, she joined me. At 11 years old, she's learned how to tune into her body, recognizes when she needs rest, and understands how her choices during the day impact her sleep at night. I'm so proud of the awareness that she's built, and I thought her perspective could be really valuable, not just for parents listening, but also for kids learning to navigate these habits themselves. So to bring this to light, I thought it would be great for her to join me and provide her perspective. After all, this podcast is all about understanding sleep as a whole family experience. So I invited her to join me for a few minutes just to share her thoughts on routines, movement, and what helps her feel her best. Hey, Ryan.
Hi.
Thanks so much for joining me again today.
I'm excited to be back.
So last week you joined me for a conversation, and today we're building on that. And I just wanted to get some insights from you on your day. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to tell me about your morning routine. What are the things that you do when you wake up so that you feel ready to take on the day?
Well, in the morning, I open my window. I drink water, stretch, make my bed, and then go upstairs to eat breakfast.
Thanks for that. Then what is something during the day that you do if your energy starts to feel low?
I wouldn't say it happens often, but I would drink water because it's the first thing Mommy would tell me to look for. I just started using drops of strawberry lemon.
Oh, so you're talking about the electrolytes drops.
Yeah,
because you're super active, so that helps to hydrate you faster. And how do you know when your body needs a break or more sleep?
First, I have rest days, and if too much, we talk about how we can change my schedule for the week.
Mm-hmm. You're super active, right? You are not only a taekwondoist, you have your black belt, you're a soccer player, you're in running club and chorus, and you're a Girl Scout, right? So we have rest days that are built in, right? Every Thursday you have a rest day. But if you're feeling overwhelmed, we sit down and we take a look at the schedule together and we decide what is it that you're going to put aside for that week, right? Like maybe you'll only go to soccer one time or you'll take less taekwondo classes, right? Because it's important to have that built in, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And then what's your favorite part of your bedtime routine and what would you skip if you could?
My favorite is when we read stories, but especially when we make them up.
Right. Love that.
I don't think there's anything I would want to get rid of. I love the night.
You love going to sleep. There's nothing about your bedtime routine you don't like?
I love sleeping.
Well, thank you so much again for joining me and for giving us some of your thoughts. I hope hearing from her shows that when we teach kids to listen to themselves, to understand the connection between their day and their sleep, we're giving them tools that they can use for a lifetime. It's not about being perfect every day. It's about building awareness, making small adjustments, and recognizing that rest isn't just something you do at night. It's something you nurture all day long. All of this is to say that routines, rhythms, hydration, food, connection are all tied to one thing, your child's development. Sleep fuels brain growth, learning, hormone regulation, immune function, and emotional resilience. It's the driver behind how they feel, focus, and grow. I hope this episode helps you look at bedtime differently, and if you're feeling stuck, start with just one shift. Maybe it's morning light, maybe it's adding quiet time after school. Small changes can reset your child's rhythm and your peace of mind. When you reframe sleep as a whole day process and teach your child to tune in, not just power through, you're building skills that will serve them for life. If you've loved this episode, share it with a fellow parent or an educator in your community. Let's reframe how we support sleep and let's build a culture of intentional rest that starts long before bedtime. Until next time, sleep well.